All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our next session in our current Boosters and Beyond series. Today we're going to be talking about the dementia-friendly care and the Maine Dementia Care Change Toolkit that we have put together. Margaret McLaughlin is our esteemed speaker for today. She's got some great stuff for you. But before we get into that, we have a couple of housekeeping items to get through. So if you're not familiar with who we are the IPRO QIN-QIO. IPRO holds the federally funded Medicare QIO contract for the 12 regions shown here. IPRO helps support New York, New Jersey, and Ohio. Health-centric advisors help support Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And Clarent helps support Maryland, Delaware, and the District of Columbia. Together, we are 3 organizations under the IPRO QIN-QIO banner. So if anyone asks if you know who IPRO is or Health-Centric Advisors or Clarent, you say yes. And with that, I'll have Mary Ellen give us an update on COVID-19.
Thanks, Josh. So on the COVID vaccine news, the hospitalizations continue to trend downward. They're down 16.4% with the 7-day average at about 1,500. The bivalent booster as of the 24th of April continues to slowly tick up at 55.6 million folks that have received that updated booster dose. And we have, we're ticking up towards 43% of adults 65 and older having received the bivalent booster as well. The NHSN data remains the same at 54% for those nursing home residents that are up to date. And the latest variants as of the 29th, the XBBB strains remain the most dominant at almost 98%. You may have heard the XBBB 1.16 has a name now, Arcturus. I guess we're naming our strains like we name our hurricanes, but this is the one of latest concern. It's ticked up a little, 11.7%. It's been following the trends of the other strains where it's highly transmissible, but it doesn't seem to show any more serious illness. Although of note, pediatricians have been noting that conjunctivitis is a symptom with this particular strain. So while CDC hasn't confirmed that, these are the observations being seen. Next slide. So we mentioned the updated guidance for use of the COVID-19 vaccines, and we continue to get questions on this. So we really encourage folks, please reach out to us if you have questions. This is a moving target. I did this slide yesterday, and this updated guidance that was updated on the 22nd of April was just updated yesterday. So if you go to this link, and I'll pop that in the chat, the interim clinical considerations were updated as of May 1st. They've just continued to add more specification to things, a little more clarity. But the bottom line is the goal is to make the vaccine schedule simpler. So for folks that have not been vaccinated at all, they're only going to need the bivalent dose. For folks that have had the start of the monovalent series, they can have the bivalent dose no sooner than 2 months after that first monovalent dose. And the updated bivalent dose folks have been asking for this spring is optional. So people age 65 and older can receive an additional bivalent vaccine dose at least 4 months after their first one. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're talking to residents who may want this option, that there is a planned bivalent dose being planned for the fall. So sort of balancing risk versus benefit if they want to wait until the fall when they'll be the latest and greatest offered. So I encourage people to check that site often, because I have a feeling it's going to continue to change as we go through the summer and into early fall. And that's it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mary Ellen. We did get a couple of questions into chat. If you could take a look at those while I pass it to Margie.
Sure.
So go ahead, Margie, all yours. Muted.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. So delighted to be with you all today and share some great work that happened up in Maine. And perhaps I can offer you some insights that might be helpful. The Maine Dementia Change Package was a team of folks from all over Maine, including the Alzheimer's Association, the Ombudsman, all the different groups, the trade associations, providers from all big and small nonprofit and proprietary homes that all came together, recognizing there was a particular need to support staff in providing better dementia care. Real effort, you might know up in Maine, little bit higher rates up in Maine for antipsychotic drugs. And as a result, they wanted to be sure that they were tackling some of that and really helping to send the message that antipsychotic drugs for some of our folks with dementia was not the appropriate use of that drug. And so as a result, they put together a toolkit and basically put together 8 steps. It's an 8-step change package. So let me, Josh, next slide, please. All right, and you can find the change package here, and this is what it looks like. And what you'll see there is that there's the toolkit. There are PowerPoint slides, many that you'll see in today's program. There are YouTube videos, so that in order to support being able to share the message, some of those messages are right there in the toolkit, and an array of other things that I think you might find useful in your work. Let me go to the next slide and I'll show you, basically it's 8 steps, and one more click will show you the 8 steps for our change package. And so the first line of defense was basically to establish a way that everybody within an organization understood how important it was to keep antipsychotic drug use as low as possible, and that everybody should know the interventions that really make for comfort and a good life for residents. And that includes families. We talked a lot about a therapeutic environment, which was a community-wide commitment to fostering an environment where residents thrive and is focused on their well-being, both spirit, mind, and body. We talked a lot about a data-driven dashboard. You get to see some of that. We wanted to be sure that staff had demonstrated competencies. And so using a bunch of different tools, we were able to identify things that we felt were really important that everybody who worked with people with dementia could do successfully, including what we called speaking a fluent Alzheimer's. And so that was kind of an important step in the process. We also talked about hospital transitions because we felt that no change package was complete unless it actually had a safe way to move people back and forth and make sure that our folks who had Alzheimer's disease, when they went to the hospital, did not come back worse than they were. We talked a lot about family education and how important it was, despite the fact that many family members had lived with somebody with Alzheimer's disease. Probably felt they knew a lot about Alzheimer's disease, but that kind of big emotional swell kind of came into the process. And so as a result, we wanted to be sure that families had kind of a good sense of how to take care and how best to visit with their loved one. You'll notice number 7, you've heard me say it, Josh has said it quite a few times, but gradual dose reduction actually was down there on number 7. Not that you have to do this all in order, but we felt that it took putting all of these other things in place initially was what was making the biggest difference. And then being sure your physicians and medical directors were all part of singing from the same choir page, that folks could count on the fact that when the nurse called on a Saturday night, that she understood exactly what she was asking the doctor to do, and making sure that every possible strategy had been exhausted before they made that call at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. And so that was really important to us. I think the most important thing, though, that we think about is really creating a person-centered environment. And what I mean by that is knowing the person so well, just having a relationship with them, so that it wasn't just a matter of, checking the boxes that they like ice cream at 7 p.m., that they are religious or a part of a particular tradition, but how much that means to them, and and what that means to them to celebrate that tradition. And so when I think about person-centered care, I think about this next slide. And Josh, if you could hit that music. Come on back. Hit the nope.
Yeah,
That
I'm
one.
trying to hit the thing here. I don't know if I can do it in full screen.
I guess it switched. It was on automatic. All right. All right. Thanks, Josh. You can just swing on back. That's great. What you're missing here is Mary Ellen's dad, and he's singing Country Roads along with Mary Ellen. And when I think about person-centered care, it's like knowing the essence of this guy, you know, seeing the twinkle in his eye, and seeing him with his family and all the things that made such a difference in his life. And so when we put together the change package, it was really about having this in mind for every single person before we kind of launched into any of those other parts of the care that we would give. Next slide. When we talk about the first line of defense, we use some tools like, is it for me or is it for you? And when we got folks together, we actually had a contract, and folks can download the contract, and actually an organization can agree to the tenets that were described in this change package. And it's really all about person-centered care. So take a look at that when you get a minute. Looking at the next slide, what you'll see is that some of the processes and some of the indicators, I like to scoot down to the indicators because each of the elements of the change package, each one has kind of like a process and what it would look like if it were fully operationalized. And so in this one, you can see where it's really a shared strategy, a shared philosophy that all the behaviors or expressions that people are offering are communication, and that they should be addressed directly through other innovative approaches. And also recognizing that, like, we all have our own like idiosyncrasies and things that we do. And that's not different when you have dementia. It's just that under a clinical microscope, those might look like behaviors. So we keep all of that in mind as we go forward. You'll see on the next slide that there's a really great tool. It was put out by the Alzheimer's Society. I just share it with you because some organizations who were part of the Maine project love this tool. And it gave them a really great sense of how to begin, just the beginning pieces of how to really get to know people really well. So it was useful to a lot of folks. The next slide, though, begins to talk about what I consider to be the essence of it, of the whole thing when I think about care for people with Alzheimer's disease. And that's really about creating a therapeutic environment. I was fortunate enough to be part of an organization that created a really unique special care unit. It truly was special. It wasn't just memory care, it was comfort care. And in providing that kind of care to folks, what it did was it really brought out and helped people to really thrive and to have this real sense. It wasn't just about having friends, but it was being part of something that was so productive and so useful that when people in the morning, they used to speed up or try to rouse the CNAs and say, hurry up, I got to get to work in the morning. And so they literally would come down expecting to be part of this really kind of meaningful day. It functioned, I'll tell you more about it, but it functioned almost like a daycare. And so all the folks came away from their bedrooms and, you know, places where they could, shall we say, get in trouble. You know.
Why can't I hear anything? Sorry, I'm trying to do an in-service. It's not working.
But so as we kind of move forward, let's talk a little bit about that therapeutic environment. What are some of the elements? And you can scoop by that, Josh. those are some of the ways that we think.
Well, hey,
But I put some,
Teddy,
maybe one of my guys can find the mute on that. And Josh, if you can just advance me just beyond that, that'd be great. Thanks. So when we think about all of this, what we see is that we're really talking about a philosophy that's focused on true well-being. People felt that they had a real sense of being part of something bigger. The different rooms, 4 different rooms, actually had 4 different programs going on so that people could float around, be part of anything that was going on. It always opened with a really cheery morning, current events. We talked about current events. We talked about things that would be going on in the day. We checked in with folks to see if there were things that they wanted to do on that particular day. It was an Episcopal home, so we did our morning prayers, and we sang, we said the Pledge of Allegiance and sang some songs, and got everybody off to a good start early as the day started. It was all about comfort care. And so helping people to feel comfortable and at ease, and that there was plenty to do. And at different times in the day, there was time to take a little time out and kind of be able to relax a little. In the next slide, we talked about being fluent. Thanks, Josh. And being fluent in Alzheimer's. And so that a lot of our staff developed such a keen understanding that you could almost, you'd see them talking with folks, and even folks who couldn't complete a sentence, they could respond to them in the most loving and just patient way. And they could anticipate lots of folks' problems, and they were able to deliver their own actions, words, and expressions in a deep sense of caring and love. I have to say, I don't know if you've read the book, Best Friends Approach, but Virginia Bell, who just, who was, came up with the Best Friends Approach, she just passed away last month. She's a pioneer in this approach, and the idea that she shares is developing, or just what she described as having knack, and having a knack for taking care of folks with Alzheimer's disease was part of this whole notion of a therapeutic environment. Next slide. In this next one, we look at as minimal antipsychotic drugs as possible. We remind people and remind families about the black box warning that's on those drugs. And we recognize that it's not going to happen for everybody, but it can happen for a lot of folks. We had 41 people who were part of our special care, and actually only one of them was on an antipsychotic drug. So just shows you what great interventions and, offering that philosophy of comfort can provide. On the next slide, you'll see that we put together personalized interventions, and for every single one of our residents, we had a little plastic cubby box, and kind of one of those plastic shoe box. And in it, it had types of things that made people comfortable in their real life. One gentleman named John used to have a pipe and his wallet. And just by having his pipe, a lot of times he didn't need to smoke it. He just had to have it with him. And a lot of times that brought comfort. One of our ladies, Margaret, had a fabulous tradition, a huge Catholic faith. And we got her kids to say the rosary and recorded that, so that in her little cubby box, it actually had all of her kids saying the rosary with her. And you'd hear her, and all of a sudden she'd go, "There's Jeannie, Hail Mary, full of grace," So it was this fabulous thing to see. Another really important part of a therapeutic environment is what we consider to be noise reduction. And we actually did a pilot test. One of this work all comes out of a pilot that we did, and then went on to do some other work. And we began to have folks identify and actually measure the sound level. And what we recognized was that, wow, when things got really loud, lots began to happen. And so let me just show you quickly. One of my friend Bob, his special care unit had 38 men and 2 women. He said it functioned more like a correctional facility. And what they were trying to do was, at a certain point, they considered all the factors that might cause for combative events or problems. And as a result, one of the ones that came up consistently was staff felt that it was always so loud that you couldn't hear yourself think. And so what they actually did was they actually used monitors and kept track of the sound on the unit. And so on the next slide, you'll see where, excuse me, they were able to not only keep track, but then began to respond. They got rid of overhead paging. They got rid of all kinds of ambient noise, TVs that kind of ran constantly. They did all kinds of things and began to recognize that bringing down the volume helped in so many ways that, once that happened, they had decreased the number of combative events over the course of 2 months from 81 to 3. And they were able to save about $75,000 in that 2 months on antipsychotic drug use. They hired an activity person from 4 to 9 to kind of cover and kind of put together some really meaningful and useful things for folks to do. And believe it or not, unexpected outcome was that they reduced staff absentee rates by 41% as things began to change. Those kinds of statistics make a big difference. Take a look at the next slide and you'll see that they started looking for some of the different things that cause some of that. And, sometimes the med carts would hit, the difference between a tiled floor and a carpeted floor, and the old-fashioned pill crushers, things like that. But one of the best things that came out of it was this stop, sit, and listen ticket. And what this one particular nurse did was she actually had a moment where you could sit and listen, and she'd give folks one of those little night blindfolds, and they had to sit and just listen to all the ambient noise that would happen for 10 minutes. And she'd come by once the alarm went off, and they could take off their blindfold, and she would have them almost like journal on the back of this little ticket of all the noise that person heard and what might have scared them when they heard it or startled them and those kinds of things. And so they actually went about the process and used this as part of their QAPI committee. And so this was actually her work in helping to do the stop and listen tickets. So that was part of the therapeutic environment as well. And then, of course, things that everybody's heard about, ensuring adequate lighting, soothing colors, limiting glare, which we've heard a lot about over the course of time, and also attention to temperature, not only just in the room itself, but, we all run hot and cold differently. And so making sure that each person was, had a sweater if they needed it, or making sure that folks were physically comfortable all throughout the day. One of the other things that we talked a lot about is the shift change. And what we did on our special care unit was we actually staggered the departures so that it became one-on-one handoffs. And we did it over the course of 45 minutes. So people only left one at a time. And that way, everybody wasn't saying goodbye and telling everybody they loved them, and the whole gang would leave all at once. In fact, we made no long goodbyes. You couldn't even say goodbye. The handoffs happened elsewhere, and it made it so simple for folks. When we say don't put words in their mouth, we literally, many of our CNAs so loved our residents that, often they'd say, oh, gotta go pick up the kids. And by 4 o'clock, everybody in the place would be going, I got to get home. I got to pick up the kids. And so we kind of adopted, don't put words in their mouth, don't literally give them the things that we're going to have to struggle with all day long. In the next slide, as we get off of the structured activities, they became very holistic in nature. And folks did go out in the winter, and we put coats on, and we used the courtyard. And we made sure that outdoors and all of the activities were scheduled all throughout the day. When the TLC unit finally got up to its full running, it went from 7 in the morning until 9:30 at night, this kind of in-house daycare kind of idea. The activities were at all different levels, and people could come in and out and do all kinds of wonderful things. This is everybody out fishing, kind of a fun day, as I recall. moving on to the next slide, you'll see that we talked about strategies for sleeping and making sure that everybody got enough sleep, trying to avoid sleep deprivation. Just imagine the rest of your life and not getting a full night's sleep. And so what we started doing was having folks actually stay overnight to see what it was like to actually stay and sleep and try to get a good night's sleep at the home. And it was an eye-opening experience. So folks really began to appreciate what it took to make things quiet so people could sleep all throughout. We wanted to be sure also that they had plenty of food and materials by their bedside. So if they did wake up, they had a snack. On the next slide, you'll see that we talked about different strategies for bathing and making that so much more relaxing and comfortable. We actually used to have a spa book, and people could go around and actually schedule their time at the spa. And so that was kind of a game changer as well. We talked about some of the data-driven dashboards on the next, and you'll see there's a great tool there to actually keep track of some of the different things that go on. In the next one, we talked about obvious and demonstrated competencies. These are some competencies that come right out of the toolkit. Take a look at them because those were the ones that we ensured that every staff was able to do. On the next slide, you'll see that we have a hospital transition process. We wanted to be sure that people understood that some of our folks had special needs. And so on the next slide, you'll see that we had a little paper that went out with them, and it actually said, you know, when I'm anxious, these are some of the things I do, and these are the things you can do when I'm feeling anxious. And that actually went as part of the transfer sheet in order to ensure that folks receiving that patient would have a good sense of what they needed to keep them comfortable. On the next slide, we talked a lot about family education. And there was an actual structured program that we did in the evenings that included dinner. And so families became so good at it that they, once they passed certain courses in our process, they actually became volunteers on the special care unit because they got so good at kind of getting the philosophy and a notion. On the next slide, we look at the process for gradual dose reduction. I won't read you all this, but here is the policy that one of our organizations who was part of the pilot actually wrote the policy using a lot of the person-centered language and making a true commitment to taking care of folks with Alzheimer's disease and dementia in a unique way. And this ensured that that would happen. And then the last one was getting buy-in and assurance in collaboration with the physician and medical director who became part of this whole effort to keep antipsychotic drugs at the very, very lowest level. I know it's a lot all in one, but if you take a look at that change idea package, it's way too big. Folks went on to trim it down, but I gave you the link to the whole thing so that you'd have all of the different research that went along with it, all of the different pieces. And so I'm just going to stop for a minute and with the rest of my gang, feel free to jump in. Any questions, anything anybody want to share?
Thanks so much, Margie. Yeah, working with facilities on antipsychotic drug reductions, I've seen a lot of facilities, you know, that's the first thing that they try, and then they immediately fail, and they say, see, we can't take them off the antipsychotics. But there are so many systems and things that you need to put in place to ensure that those reductions are successful. So I think taking this approach is really brilliant, and it's absolutely the way that we should be doing antipsychotic reductions.
Oh, appreciate it, Josh.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask Margie?
We have lots more for you. Next week, Daniel is going to talk to us about antipsychotic drugs, and he's got a great presentation. He was one of our is one of our fellow colleagues, and he went on to get his PhD and is going to be with us next week to give some really great, just lots of great information to help you out.
Excellent. Thanks, Margie. Rob, as a comment, so important to have the buy-in from the team. The excellent resource. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. So we have some upcoming sessions that I really want to highlight. This Thursday, we have our next session in our EPP series, talking about the impact of trauma. The last two sessions have been incredible. Really has even sparked some inspiration and a really big interest in emergency preparedness for myself. So I'm putting that link into chat to make sure that you all are registered for that upcoming session. We also are planning a super day session for you all, going to be talking about the top 10 deficiencies across the nation, the top F tags. So I'm going to put a link to that in the chat as well. Really hope you all can attend. It's going to be an all-day session with one link. Come to the session that you feel is going to be beneficial to you, or even stay for the whole thing. That'd be perfect too. So that link is in chat as well. And before we end today's session, we just want to hear from you. Was today's program a good use of your time? Can you put yes or no? Perfect. And then I'll add this other one, this break into chat as well. Is there something that you can use from today's session in your own daily practice? All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for your feedback. Really does mean a lot to us. So I have a QR code up here. You can scan this code and it'll take you to a place where you can print out a certificate of participation for today's session. If you don't get it in time, or you're having trouble with it, don't worry. I'm going to be sending out the QR code to all the participants in an email as well after the session. So be on the lookout for that. And then here's our contact information. If you want to reach out to us, if you have any questions, need any support with anything, we're here to help support you. So I'll just leave this up for another minute. And Margie, do you want me to try and see if I can get that video of to play with Mary Ellen and her father?
That would be so nice. Only send us out.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah,
Mary Ellen doing that.
I was thinking the same thing. So I'm just gonna try something real quick.
Gather round her, Myers lady, stranger to the water, dusty, painted on the sky, misty mist of moonshine, teardrop in my eye, country roads take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads. I hear her voice in the morning hour, she calls me. Radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. Country roads take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama,
was great, Mary Ellen. His voice really compliments yours.
Well, we used to do duets together, so it was a lot of fun. He was a great singer. That didn't showcase his voice.
All right, well, that'll be it for today's session. If you know anyone who would benefit from seeing the session again, we are having the live replay again tomorrow, which I can provide the link in the follow-up email today to you folks. Be sure to share that with anyone who might benefit.